3 nurses vanished during their late-night shift at the hospital, leaving their mothers and the entire staff traumatized and desperate for answers. But 6 months later, a sewer maintenance worker finds something shocking lodged inside a drainage pipe, a discovery that would change everything and reveal the horrifying truth behind their disappearance. The morning light filtered through the curtains of Marcia Langston's kitchen as she paced back and forth, her cell phone pressed against her ear. The steam from her untouched coffee swirled upward in the still air of her Millhaven home. It had been exactly 6 months since her daughter, Freya, disappeared without a trace, along with her 2 best friends, Kiara Mendez and Kali Huang. I still can't believe we're dealing with a water problem on top of everything else. Marcia sighed into the phone. My shower this morning was just brown sludge. Same here, replied Isabel Mendez, her voice tired from months of worry. Through whole neighborhoods affected. Leha had to cancel her morning appointments at the clinic because they can't sterilize equipment properly. Dr. Liwa hang the 3rd mother on their 3-way call. Spoke up the hospital administrator called me at 4 a.m. about it. Something about a major blockage in the municipal system. Public Works has been working on it since last night. The 3 women had formed an unbreakable bond since their daughters vanished before the disappearance. They had been casual acquaintances through their daughter's friendship, but grief and uncertainty had forged them into a support system that none of them could now imagine living without. Their children, the 3 young nurses, had been inseparable since they'd all gotten jobs at Meadow Ridge General Hospital after nursing school. Freya had become a licensed nurse in the dermatology and plastic surgery department. Kiara worked in pediatrics. Kali had found her calling in the bustling emergency room. Different departments, different schedules, but they always made time for each other. Detective Roa promised he'd call if there was anything new. Liwa reminded them, the police haven't stopped looking. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Marcia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She pulled the device from her ear and checked the screen. Detective Vincent Roar. She read aloud, her heart immediately racing. I need to take this, hold on. She quickly switched calls, her fingers trembling. Detective, is there news? Mrs. Langston. The detective's deep voice came through the line, sounding tense. There's been a significant development in the case. It's connected to the water problem affecting your neighborhood. Marcia's knees weakened and she gripped the edge of her kitchen counter for support. What is it? Have you found them? I can't explain over the phone, Detective Roar replied. I need you to come to the scene. Can you bring the others? Mrs. Mendez and DI Dr. Hangit might be connected to their children as well. I'm on the phone with them right now, Marcia said, her voice rising in pitch. We'll come immediately. Where are you? We're at the industrial park, specifically the sewer maintenance site in Chandler Creek District, he said. I'll text you the exact location. Please come as soon as you can. After the detective hung up, Marcia quickly switched back to the call. With her friends, that was Detective Roar. She announced, her voice trembling. He says, there's a significant update with the case, and it's connected to the water problem. He wants us to meet him at the Chandler Creek Industrial Park at the sewer maintenance site. The sewer, Isabel repeated, confusion evident in her voice. What could that possibly have to do with our daughters? I don't know, Marcia replied, already grabbing her car keys from the hook by the door. But he sounded urgent. He's sending the exact location to my phone. I'm letting know, Leha said decisively. I'll meet you both there. The call ended and Marca rushed out to her car, her mind racing with possibilities. The morning air was cooled against her skin as she slid into the driver's seat. Her phone dinged with a text message from Detective Roar containing a map pin. She quickly shared it to Isabel and Lehoa, then entered it into her GPS and pulled out of her driveway. The 20-minute drive to the industrial park seemed to take hours. Marcia's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she navigated through Millhaven's morning traffic. When she finally arrived at the location, she saw several police vehicles and a public works truck parked around what looked like an excavation site. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off a large area where workers in coveralls were gathered around a large pipe that had been unearthed from the ground. As Marca parked and stepped out of her car, she spotted Isabel pulling in beside her. They exchanged a worried glance before walking together toward the scene. Lehoa arrived moments later, joining them at the edge of the taped-off area. Detective Vincent Rorick, a tall man with graying temples and perpetually tired eyes, spotted them and motioned them over. He lifted the tape for them to duck under. Thank you for coming so quickly, he said grimly. There's something you need to see. He led them closer to where several officers were photographing items laid out on the muddy ground. As they approached, Marcia's breath caught in her throat. Spread out on the ground were 3 sets of nurse scrubs, one pink, one blue, and one green, along with pairs of white nursing shoes. They were kicked with mud, and stained with what looked disturbingly like blood, but they were unmistakably the type worn by hospital staff. "Oh my God," Isabel whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Detective gestured to a sewer worker standing nearby. "Mr. Jensen here, Wace investigating the cause of the water backup that's been affecting your neighborhood since last night when his team located the blockage and began clearing it. They found these." The worker, a middle-aged man in mud-splattered coveralls, nodded. "Solemnly never seen anything like it. In 20 years on the job, the uniforms were all bundled up tight with surgical tape and steel wire made into a ball that got wedged right in the main junction pipe, caused a massive backup all the way to the hospital." District Detective Rohr turned to the three mothers. "We need you to tell us if you recognize these items. Could they belong to your daughters?" Marka stepped forward first, her legs unsteady. She approached the turp, kneeling carefully beside the pink scrubs. The size looked right, and there was a small pin on the collar, a silver dermatology symbol that Freya always wore. "This is Freya's," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "She always wore pink scrubs in dermatology, and these are her shoes." Isabel moved to the blue set. "Kiara's our blue, pediatric nurses wear blue at Meadow Ridge." Her fingers hovered over the fabric, not touching but identifying the butterfly patch she sewed on the pocket. "It's hers, Lihoa," with the clinical detachment that sometimes came with her medical training exam. "And the green uniform, all personnel wear green. This is Kalia's size, and these are definitely her shoes. She had the soles with rubber grips added because of the slippery floors." In the emergency department, Detective Rohrick nodded to a forensic technician who was setting up equipment under a nearby tent. "We're going to conduct preliminary DNA testing right here. If you could wait for a few minutes, we'll have initial confirmation." The mothers were led to a police vehicle where they could sit while the forensic team worked. The wait was excruciating, with each woman lost in her own thoughts. Marcia stared at the excavation site, watching as more officers photographed the pipe and the surrounding area. After what seemed like an eternity, Detective Rohr approached them again. His expression told them everything before. "Has spoke. The preliminary tests confirm it. DNA from all three uniforms matched the samples you provided when your daughters went missing," he said quietly. "Given the condition of the fabric and how little the colors have faded, we don't believe they've been in the sewer system for the full 6 months. This is recent evidence." "What does that mean?" Lua asked her medical mentor, calculating possibilities. "It means," Detective Rohr said, "that Somianetalabetley disposed of these uniforms recently. The way they were bundled with wires suggests they wanted them to cause a blockage, or at least make them heavy enough to sink and stay hidden. This wasn't an accident. Our daughter sizable." Couldn't finish the question. "We don't have any evidence of that," the detective assured her quickly. "What we do have is our first real lead. In months, someone had these uniforms, and they tried to dispose of them in a way that suggests they're trying to hide evidence, or maybe wanted the evidence to be found that someone might still have information about what happened to Freya." Kiara and Kalia Marshall looked back at the muddy uniforms, her daughter's pink scrubs now being carefully placed in an evidence bag. "So what happens now?" Detective Rurik said with determination. "We follow this lead, and since the evidence was discarded recently, we have a much better chance of tracking whoever did this." As the forensic team continued processing the evidence, a silver BMW pulled up to the edge of the scene. Marcia watched as a man in his early 40s stepped out, his posture rigid with concern, as he surveyed the police activity. He wore expensive casual clothes under a light jacket, looking as though he'd dressed in a hurry. "Dr. Velman," Detective Rohr called out, recognizing the newcomer. Marcia immediately recognized him too. Dr. Nathan Velman, the dermatologist and plastic surgeon who had supervised Freya at the hospital. He had attended the first few search meetings after the girls disappeared, but had gradually stopped coming. As the weeks turned into months, the doctor approached, offering a firm handshake to the detective. "I just finished my night shift and was driving home when I noticed off commotion," he explained, running a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair. "Is there some kind of accident? I saw the public works truck and got concerned." Detective Rohr briefly explained the situation, gesturing toward the evidence collection area. "We've recovered what appears to be the missing nurses' uniforms from a sewer pipe blockage. It's the first significant evidence we've found in Mont's Drive." Velman's eyebrows rose, and he glanced toward the three mothers with a sympathetic expression. "I heard about the water issues at the hospital last night. The surgeries were nearly cancelled because of it." His gaze settled on the evidence bags being loaded into a police van. "Those are their uniforms?" "Yes," Marcia confirmed, watching his reaction carefully. "Freya's pink ones. From your department." Something flickered across the doctor's face, concerned perhaps, or maybe something deeper. "Nurse Freya was exceptional, Hess said quietly, best assistant I ever had in plastic surgery. Her attention to detail was unmatched. He turned back to Detective Roar. What happens now? Does the change the investigation with this evidence? We're upgrading from a missing persons cassette to a potential criminal investigation, the detective explained. We'll be reviewing CCTV footage from business, the sewer access points, and interviewing hospital staff. Again, Dr. Velman nodded, thoughtful, literate. Seems like the logical approach, though. I personally only work night shifts at Metteridge now. He glanced at his watch. During the day, I run my own private practice. I actually just finished my night shift and have patients waiting this afternoon, Detective. Roar pulled out a small notebook. We'd like to speak with you again as part of our follow-up interviews. Would you be available at the hospital during your shift, or should we schedule something at your private practice? Either works, Dr. Velman said, reaching into his pocket for a business card. Here's my clinic information. Perhaps we could arrange a separate time. My schedule is quite packed with patients. As they talked, a news van pulled up to the scene, and reporters began unloading equipment. Dr. Velman's demeanor suddenly changed. His shoulders tensed, and he began glancing repeatedly at his watch. I should really be going, he said, taking a step back. I need to get some rest before my afternoon appointments. Please keep me updated on new developments. I've missed Freya's assistance greatly. Detective Roar thanked him for stopping by and turned to greet the approaching media team. Velman quickly retreated toward his car, adjusting his jacket as he walked. Marcia noticed something odd about his behavior, the sudden urgency to leave when the media arrived, while Liwa and Isabella stayed to prepare for the inevitable interviews. Masha found herself hurrying after the doctor. Dr. Velman, wait, sheckled, catching up to him at the edge of the parking area. He turned, surprise evident on his face. Mrs. Langston, is there some things we haven't spoken in months? She said, studying his face. How have you been? Busy, he replied, his hand resting on his car door. Opening a private practice has been demanding but rewarding. I wish Freya were here. We discussed my plans many times. She was excited about potentially joining me once I got established. A sad smile touched his lips. No other nurse has her expertise in post-op care for facial procedures. I didn't know you had opened your own clinic, Marcia said. Congratulations. Thank you, he replied, seeming to relax slightly. It's always been my vision to have my own consultation space. Most surgeries still happen at the hospital, of course. I don't have all the necessary equipment at my clinic yet. Before Marcia could respond, Isabel and Liha approached, having evidently decided to avoid the media after all. Dr. Liwa said with a professional nod, I've actually made an appointment at your clinic this afternoon. I have a patient who might need plastic surgery, and I wanted to discuss the case with you. Ah, Dr. Hung, yes, he said, recognition flickering in his eyes. I have you in misscheduled 2 o'clock, correct? That's right, she confirmed. The doctor maintained a polite smile, but Maka noticed how his fingers tapped restlessly against his car door. I apologize, but I really must go. It was a long night and I need to rest before continuing work this afternoon. He nodded to them collectively. I'll see you this afternoon, Dr. Heng. As he drove away, Maka turned to Lihoa. Where exactly is his new clinic? Lihoa looked surprised by the question. It's on Maple Avenue near the main intersection with Oak Street. It opened the same month our daughters disappeared. I'm surprised you didn't know. Marka shook her head slowly. With everything that's happened, I stopped noticing anything outside this nightmare. She paused, thinking about the doctor's behavior. Did he seem strange to you just now? He seemed tired. Isabel offered. Night shifts are brutal. I remember when Kiara was doing her night rotation in the NICU. She was like a zombie. Maybe, Marka murmured, not entirely convinced. A reporter approached, the microphone in hand, and Marka reluctantly agreed to a brief interview. She spoke about their continued hope of finding girls, and her belief that whoever had disposed of the uniforms would eventually be caught. After the interviews, Detective Roll gathered the 3 mothers again. The forensic team will continue processing the evidence. I'll update you as soon as we have more concrete information. Framblab and the sewer experts were going to find out what happened to your daughters and who dumped these uniforms. With heavy hearts but a renewed sense of hope, the 3 women returned to their respective cars, each processing the morning's shocking developments in their own way. Marcia drove slowly through the familiar streets of Millhaven, her mind replaying the morning's events. The image of Freya's mud-stained pink scrubs kept flashing before her eyes. Those uniforms had been a source of such pride for her daughter, the tangible symbol of her hard work through nursing school and her achievement in landing a position at Metteridge General. As she approached a traffic light at the main intersection, something caught Her eye on the corner stood a modern-looking building with a sign that read Aesthetic Medicine. The parking lot was empty except for a single silver BMW Dr. Velman's car. He said he was going home to rest. Marka murmured to herself, slowing her car as the light turned red through the building's large front windows. Despite the darkened interior, she could make out silhouettes. Dr. Velman appeared to be engaged in an intense conversation with another man. The doctor's body language was agitated. He was gesturing emphatically at one point, reaching toward the other man's face. The stranger violently swatted the doctor's hand away, his posture aggressive. Marcia watched, transfixed by the confrontation playing out like a silent movie. Through the clinic's windows, whatever they were discussing, it was clearly making Dr. Velman upset. A sudden blaring horn from behind made her jump in her seat. Glancing up, she realized the light had turned green, and the driver behind her was impatiently demanding she move. Flustered, Marka pressed the gas pedal and continued through the intersection, her eyes darting to the rear-view mirrors. The clinic disappeared from view. What was that about? She wondered aloud, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The doctor had seemed perfectly composed at the crime scene. If a bit, what could have transpired in the short time since to cause such an intense confrontation? Marsh drove one more block before making a sudden decision. At the next chance, she performed a cautious U-turn, began heading back toward the clinic. Logic told her it wasn't her concern. Boft couldn't shake the urge to ensure the doctor was safe and unharmed, and after 6 months of helplessness in the search for her daughter, any anomaly seemed worth investigating. As she approached the clinic again, she was surprised to see both Doctors Velman's BMW and a motorcycle she hadn't noticed before pulling out of the parking lot. The motorcycle, a sleek black sports model, pulled ahead quickly, while the doctor's car followed at a more sedate pace. At least he's okay, Marka muttered, relieved that the confrontation hadn't escalated to physical violence. Still, Ask continued on her usual route home. Coincidentally, the same direction the two vehicles had taken. Curiosity to get at her, urging her to keep an eye on where they were headed. She remembered that doctor lived in an upscale residential neighborhood not far from this area. Years ago, when Freya had first started working in his department, there had been a celebration at his home after a particularly challenging surgery had gone well. Marcia had dropped Freya off at the house, a modern architectural showpiece with expansive windows and a perfectly manicured lawn. She recalled picking Freya up later that evening, an accidentally wit moment between her daughter and the doctor. He had winked playfully at Freya, causing her to blush for weeks afterward. Freya had seemed infatuated, though she'd refused to discuss it with her mother. Eventually, whatever it was had seemed to pass, and Freya had returned to her usual self. Now, as Marcia followed at a discreet distance, she noticed that Dr. Velman didn't take the turn toward his neighborhood. Instead, he continued straight, eventually pulling into the parking lot of Medical Supply Pro. As store catering to healthcare professionals, the motorcycle had gone ahead, turning onto a smaller side street head Marcia knew led to the outskirts of town. There was an old car wash on that street, but the bike had zoomed past it without stopping. Marcia slowed her car string down the side street. What business would someone have out there? The area was largely undeveloped, with a few scattered buildings that had seen better days. This is ridiculous, she told herself firmly, gripping the steering wheel. I'm not a detective or a spy. I'm just a worried mother who's starting to see connections where there probably aren't any. With a deep breath, she continued on her way home, determined to get some rest before discussing the morning's discoveries with Isabel and Lihalataras. She drove, however, she couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Velman wasn't being entirely truthful. About something. The route home took her past the hospital where Freya had worked. Meadow Ridge General stood, tall and imposing against the midday sky, its windows reflecting the sunlight. Somewhere in that building, her daughter had spent countless hours caring for patients, forming friendships with Kiara and Kali, and working alongside Dr. Velman. Had something happened there that led to their disappearance? Maka had asked herself that question countless times over the past 6 months. Today, waste first time they'd found any significant clue, and it had been literally dredged up from the sewers beneath the town. As she finally pulled into her driveway, Maka felt the emotional weight of the morning settling over her. The discovery of the uniforms brought both hope and dread. Hope that they might finally learn what happened, and dread about what that truth might be. The familiar scent of coffee filled Marcia's kitchen as she waited for the pot to finish brewing after the morning's emotional roller Coaster she needed the caffeine to clear her head. She poured herself a steaming mug and settled at her computer, opening her messenger app, hoping to find some communication from Isabel or Leah. But they were likely as emotionally drained as she was, and taking time to process everything. Marcia switched to her email, hoping for any updates from Detective Roar. She refreshed the page, and this to me a new message popped up from him. Her heart skipped a beat as she quickly clicked it open. Mrs. Langston, the MOBGN. I wanted to update you on a significant development. Our forensic team found partial fingerprints on the steel wire used to bundle the nurse's scrubs. We've run them through our database and identified a match. Marcus Stakes, a known gang member with a prior arrest for armed robbery at a convenience store 3 years ago. There are currently multiple arrest warrants issued for him. We're treating him as our primary suspect and will be attempting to locate him at his last known address. I'll keep you informed of any further developments. Marcia read the email twice, her coffee forgotten, as she new information, a name, finally a name connected to her daughter's to pop on. Curious, she opened her web browser and searched for Marcus Deeks Millhaven. The search returned several results, including a news article about the convenience store robbery. She clicked on it and found a mugshot of a man in his 30s with extensive tattoos covering his face and neck. His eyes were hard, his expression defiant as he stared into the camera. She studied the image carefully, trying to recall if she'd ever seen this man before. Could this be the person who was arguing with Dr. Velman earlier? She hadn't gotten a clear look at the man's face through the clinic windows, and she certainly hadn't noticed any distinctive tattoos. Besides, it seemed highly unlikely that someone like Dr. Velman would associate with a known criminal. It couldn't be the same person. She murmured to herself. There's no way. Marcia reached for her phone and dialed Isabel's number. After 3 rings, her friend answered. Did you get email from Detective Roar? Marcia asked without preamble. Yes, Isabel replied, her voice tense. This Marcus Deeks person, I've been thinking about something Kiara told me before she disappeared. What's that? Marca asked, sitting up straighter. In the last few days before she vanished, Kiara mentioned feeling like someone was following her. She said she caught glimpses of a man with tattoos several times near the hospital and around her apartment building. Isabel's voice trembled slightly. That's why she started staying at Callie's place. She felt safer there. Marcia frowned, setting her mug down on the desk. Freya never mentioned anything like that to me. Did you tell Detective about this? Yes, right after the girls disappeared. The police thought it might be significant, but without any evidence or clear description, there wasn't much they could do. Did Kiara ever say where exactly she saw this man? Marcia asked, her mind racing. There was a pause on the line, as Isabel seemed to be recalling details. I remember her mentioning Pine Street near that old car wash, she said. She saw him there a couple of times when she was driving to work. Marcia's breath caught in her throat. The old car wash was on the same street where the motorcyclist had turned earlier, the one who had been arguing with Dr. Velman. Isabel, I saw something strange today, Marcia began, and then recounted her observations of Dr. Velmanot, his clinic, and the man on the motorcycle. The street with the car wash is the same one you just mentioned. You think there's a connection? Isabel asked, sounding skeptical. Drive. Velman is a respected surgeon. Why would he be involved with Samoyon, like Marcus Deeks? I don't know, Marcia admitted. Maybe it's nothing, but the timing feels off, doesn't it? The uniforms turn up in the sewer this morning, and then Dr. Velman's reappears only to be caught in a heated argument at his clinic after saying he was going home to rest. Maybe we should tell Detective Roar about what you saw, Isabel suggested. I will, but I want to be sure before I start making accusations. Marcia hesitated, then continued. By the way, did you know that Liwa has an appointment with Dr. Velmont this afternoon at his clinic? Yes, she mentioned it. Something about a petulant constellation. I think I might go with her. Marca decided, just to see the clinic for myself. You're starting to sound a bit paranoid, Isabel said gently. Velman worked with Freya for years. He attended the search meetings at the beginning. Why would he suddenly be a suspect? I'm not saying he is, Marcia defended, but something feels off, has felt off since this morning, when he showed up at the industrial park. There was a long pause before Isabel spoke again. I'll trust your instincts, Marca. You've always been more perceptive than me. Just be careful not to see connections that aren't there just because we're desperate for wars. I know, Marcia sighed. Maybe I am seeing things that aren't there. But after 6 months of nothing, I can't ignore even the slightest possibility. I understand, Isabel said softly. Let me know what you find out. I think I'll stay home and rest today. This morning took a lot out of me. After ending the call, Marca dialed Liwa next when her friend answered. Marka quickly filled her in on the email from Detective Rohr and her conversation with Isabel, a man with tattoos. Leha amused Callie, never mentioned any following her, but she wouldn't have wanted to worry me. She was always so independent. Liwa, about your appointment with Dr. Velman this afternoon, would you mind if I came with you? Marka asked. Of course not, Liwa replied. To be honest, I'm not sure. I feel up to driving after this morning. Maybe we could go together. I'll wait in the lobby while Leo have your appointment and then we can talk about what happened today, Marcia said. And, Lua, did you think Dr. Velman seemed strange this morning at the scene? Liwa paused before answering. Doctors are bound by strong ethics and vows. Marcia, someone with Velman's reputation wouldn't risk his career doing something illegal or dangerous. He was probably just tired from his night shift. And the man you saw might have been a difficult patient. It happens sometimes. You're probably right. Marka conceded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. What time is your appointment? I'll pick you up 2 o'clock. And Marcia, try not to worry too much, Detective. Rohr has a solid lead. Now let him do his job. After hanging up, Marka sat back in her chair absently, scrolling through old photos of Freya on her phone, her daughter's smiling face in her pink scrubs, arm in arm with Kiara and Callie at their nursing school graduation. The three of them had been so full of hope and ambition that day, excited to begin their careers at Meadow Ridge General. She paused on a group photo from a hospital fundraiser. 8 months ago, in the background, slightly blurred, but recognizable, was Dr. Velman, watching the three nurses with an unreaded bleak expressions. Had he always been watching them, and if so, why? The hours crawled by as Marka researched Marcus. Docs finding little beyond his arrest record and a few mentions in local news articles. She had fallen into a rabbit hole of speculation and borderline overthinking. Her phone alarm chimed, reminding her it was time to pick up Lihoa for the appointment. Glancing at the clock, she realized she needed to leave immediately. She grabbed her purse and car, keys, locking the house behind her. The drive to Lihoa's house took only 10 minutes, and her friend was already waiting outside when she arrived. Any updates from Detective Rohr? Lihoa asked as she slid into the passenger seat. Nothing new, Marcia replied, pulling away from the curb. Have you spoken with Isabel? Briefly. She's resting at Lihoa fidgeted with the strap of her handbag. This appointment, it's for a patient with severe facial scarring from a burn injury. I've been trying to find the right specialist, and Dr. Velman is one of the best in the region. I understand, Marcia said, navigating through the afternoon traffic. Professional life has to continue even through all of this. They arrived at Velman Aesthetic Medicine 15 minutes before the scheduled appointment. The clinic's exterior was sleek and modern, floor-to-ceiling windows framed by minimalist gray stonework. The parking lot had several cars now, unlike earlier, when only the doctor's BMW had been present. As they entered the reception area, they were greeted by a young woman in stylish medical scrubs behind a curved desk. Good afternoon, do you have an appointment? She asked with a practiced smile. Yes, doctor. Liwa Hang. At 2 o'clock, Liwa replied, presenting her hospital ID card. The receptionist tapped at her computer, then her expression shifted to apologetic. I'm sorry, Dr. Hang, but Dr. Velman has cancelled all his afternoon appointments due to an emergency. We tried to contact everyone, but a few calls went to voicemail. An emergency, Liua repeated, glancing at Marcia. Is everything all right? I wasn't given any details. The receptionist said just instructed Torashidu all of today's patients. Will he be at Meadow Ridge General Hospital instead? Lihoa, young woman, shook her head. I wasn't informed about that. I can reschedule you for tomorrow or early next week if you'd like. Marcia, meanwhile, had moved toward large windows overlooking the parking lot. His car is still here, she observed, pointing to the silver BMW parked in the reserved space. Has he left already? The receptionist hesitated before answering. Dr. Velman is still in his office. He said he would be leaving soon, but asked not to be disturbed. Marcia and Liwa exchanged a look before thanking the receptionist and stepping back out Sadia's. They walked across the parking lot toward Marcia's car. They passed Dr. Velman's BMW. Marcia slowed her attention, caught by something in the back seat. Through the car's window, she could see the box seat was filled with medical equipment, an oxygen tank, what appeared to be monitoring devices, and most notably a folded, portable stretcher. Lua, look at, Marcia whispered, gesturing toward the car. Why would he have all this equipment in his personal vehicle? Doesn't the clinic have its own medical transport? Liha peered through the window, frowning. That is unusual. Most practices have dedicated vehicles for equipment transport, especially something bulky like a stretcher. Something doesn't feel right, Marcia said, moving away from the car as another patient approached the clinic. First, the argument this morning? No, canceling appointments but still being here and all this equipment, Liwa said, gently touching her arm. I think you might be overthinking things. Put yourself in his shoes. He's a busy doctor who works both at the hospital and his own practice. Maybe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. They got into Marsha's car, but instead of starting the engine, she sat, staring at the clinic building. Should we wait and see what he's doing, where he's going? That's bordering on stalking, Liha said with concern. Why don't we go to Isabel's house instead? It would be better to stick together than spending time alone over this situation. Marsha hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. You're right, this whole thing is starting to get under my skin. She started the car and pulled up to the intersection, waiting for the traffic light to turn green in her rear view mirror. She saw movement in the clinic parking lot. Dr. Velman was hurrying to his car, carrying a small case. Look, Marsha said quietly, he's leaving now. They watched as the doctor got into his BMW and quickly backed out of his space. He pulled up to the intersection beside them, positioning his car in the lane to their right. From this close vantage point, they could see him clearly through his side window. Dr. Velman was on his phone, oblivious to their presence. His expression was tense, almost panicked, as he gesticulated wildly with his free hand. At one point he slammed his palm against the steering wheel. In frustration, please, they heard him exclaim through the partially open window. The next word was faint, but unmistakable, dangerous. His expression then changing from anger to something akin to pleading as he continued the call, staring straight ahead and complete of Marsha and Liwa, watching him. When the light turned green, Velman's car accelerated quickly, moving ahead of them into the flow of traffic behind them. A car honked impatiently. Marsha, startled from her observation, quickly drove through the intersection. Without consciously deciding to do so, she found herself following the doctor's BMH at a discreet distance. Marsha, what are you doing? Liwa asked, her voice tinged with concern. That didn't seem normal to me. Marka replied, keeping the silver car in sight. Do you think it was normal? We're not going to tell the doctor like some detective movie. Liwa protested. The nurse said it was an emergency. It's natural for him to be upset or worried in that situation. This is irrational, Marsha. We should just go to Isabel's place, calm down and wait for updates from Detective Roar. Marka was about to relent when she saw Dr. Velman's car make a sudden turn at an intersection onto Pine Street, the road with the old car wash that Isabel had mentioned, the same street where the motorcyclist had turned earlier that day. Lahoa. This isn't the way to Meadowridge Hospital, Marsha said, easing off the gas as they neared the intersection. The doctor had an emergency procedure. Wouldn't he be heading there? It's the only hospital in this town. Lahoa pulled out her phone and opened a map application. After a moment, she looked up with a frown. You're right. There's no hospital or medical facility down that road. She hesitated, then added, or any residential areas either. That was all the confirmation Marsha needed. She turned onto Pine Street, following Dr. Velman's car at a distance. Neither woman spoke as they left the familiar parts of Millhaven behind the urban landscape, gradually way to more industrial, less maintained areas. After about 15 minutes of driving, they found themselves on a rural road, bordered by overgrown fields. Ahead, Dr. Velman's BMW pulled into the parking lot of what appeared to be an abandoned building. A weathered sign, partially obscured by untrimmed branches, identified it as Meadowview Clinic. Marka slowed her car, pulling into a gas station across the street. From this vantage point, they could observe the doctor's movements without being noticed. The black motorcycle they had seen earlier was already parked near the building's entrance. That's the same bike, Marsha whispered, as if the doctor might hear them from across the street. They watched as Dr. Velman began unloading equipment from his car, making repeated trips into the dilapidated building. The clinic's windows were covered with dust and grime, and parts of its exterior showed signs of long neglect. Why would he be performing any kind of emergency procedure in a place like that? Liwa asked her professional.